Mainenga mararo, rerokotso, kurula, mraro. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to Media Monitor, the show that looks at how the media has been covering your news stories. My name is Mpho Tsedu. I'm only a visitor here, standing in for NDORO, who is in Zimbabwe, covering the inauguration of President Emmerson Mnangagwa. And thanks for tuning in once again into SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. Now, coming up on Media Monitor today, we take a look at how Zimbabwean media has covered the MDC Alliance's election challenge in court and President Emmerson Mnangagwa's inauguration. And research by Media Inflation Watch shows there's a decline in rates and audiences across media. And we take a look at body positivity in Mary Claire's September issue featuring the annual Naked issue. But first, here's what on the front pages of today's Sunday papers. Now, the Sunday Times is leading with a story about Finance Minister Nhlanhla and Public Enterprise Minister Pravin Gordhan, who are on top of the list of high-powered current and former officials who will give evidence to the Zondo Commission of Inquiry on how former President Jacob Zuma's administration tried to break down the department to aid state capture. Now, the City Press runs with a headline on how President Cyril Ramaphosa could soon be calling his counterparts in Dubai and India for help to get the Gupta family and their lieutenants behind bars. And Sunday Independent carries a story about a relative of a man accused of placing a hoax bomb device at FREELANCE Mosque, and the family believes police have taken advantage of his mental illness and were pinning allegations on him. The Hawks are investigating the possibility that the accused, his name is Heinrich Holzhausen, was also linked to Verulam's Imam Hussein Mosque attack in May earlier this year. Now off to KZN, the Sunday Tribune runs with the headline on how bodies are piling up at Durban Stellarwood Crematorium and are being stored overnight without refrigeration, much to the horror of families of the deceased. And off to the Western Cape, the Weekend Argus is running a story on how a 70-year-old pensioner was murdered when he tried to protect his wife during a robbery at the Surrey Estate home. The burglars fled with a TV and a cell phone after assaulting and tying up the couple with cable ties. And Zimbabwe's Sunday News is leading with a story about how this time last year, Comrade Emmerson Mnangagwa appeared to be on the ropes, hounded by a rabid faction in the ZANU-PF that had surrounded then President Robert Mugabe. And Africa's most populous nation, Nigeria's Daily Trust, leads with a story about how President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday praised Nigerian troops for their service and dedication to the nation, urging them to remain ruthless in the battle against bandit, criminals, and kidnappers. Now, my guests in studio today, Tandy Smith, Media Monitoring Africa, and QUEENIN MASUABI, former blogs editor of Huffington Post, South Africa, and freelancer. Now, Zimbabwe's President-elect Emmerson Mnangagwa will be inaugurated this morning. The day-long event will be held will begin at 10 a.m. Now, my colleague Peter NDORO is in Harare, who will talk to us about the preparations and events that took place in the lead-up to the big occasion. Gamba Guru Zimbabwe.
Hello, Bob. Thank you very much for joining us. A program that's taking place here. There are thousands of people that have been busted from the 10 provinces of the country, and they're all here to celebrate the victory of their president, the man that they voted for. And he got passed over, a fraction over 50%, and one of these big jobs is going to have to unite the country. So it's quite likely that the message that the president will deliver later today after his inauguration will be about unity. It will be about let's leave the electioneering behind us and let's start rebuilding the economy and rebuilding our country. He's been reaching out to the opposition parties in the last few days in particular. And yesterday also spent some time with the churches that gave him his support. So the same respect for the first elected president post Robert Mugabe to usher in Zimbabwe into a new era. And as I said, tens of thousands of people are right here outside the National Sports Stadium, getting ready to go in.
Okay.
And they'll be singing songs like
Peter? Peter, yeah, we have to find a different spot for you there. Perhaps it would the line will be much better. We really apologize. That line is not very clear at all, but we definitely need to talk to Peter to just give us what is happening right there in Zimbabwe as Emerson Mnangagwa will be inaugurated today, and we need to find out, is the MDC Alliance attending or not? But this is Media Monitor. We're taking a quick break. When we return, we'll get into the issues in the media.
Imagine if you could learn everything you need to know about life from yourself. What questions would you ask? What wisdom would you share?
I always say entrepreneurship are those that see opportunities where others don't.
You can't give me a bad deal. You can't cheat me. Because I'll read my own contract. I know what's going on in my contract.
But I've never been afraid of a challenge. I'm one of those people.
I didn't know the difference between my money and the business money. Whatever money that came in used to be your money. You'd go shopping, driving all these cars, and we were forgetting to pay creditors.
If we're more diligent with how we utilize our money.
So the great thing with this and my other job, being an advocate, is that in both industries, I sort of own my time.
Today, we're doing inner city buildings, we're doing commercial projects, and we're doing property development even within the township scale, and even now going to the extent of now even establishing offices in the States to be able to raise capital to invest in Africa.
Keep it locked to Bupilong every Saturday at 5:30.
Well, welcome back. You just found us there still scannering a bit, but let me welcome my guest, Thandi and QUEENIN. What did you make of today's publications? Well, let me start with you.
Okay, sure. Thanks. Thanks for having me this morning.
Yeah.
I'm having a look at the Sunday Times, just the general front page, and I just find it fascinating the different stories that we have, and in comparison to the overwhelming massive stories that we've had flooding our news media this week.
Yeah.
You know, we have a story touching on the Zondo inquiry,
yeah.
The Zondo Commission and the state capture inquiry, which, you know, you could have predicted, but I feel like they haven't given it much front cover space.
What would you have rather had terror out of that?
Well, I mean, you've got the COPE leader, Monsieur Lekota, in a swimming pool with a big rubber duck. But talking about Parktown Boys High School, where we've just had a massive scandal with the water polo coach and the sexual harassment issues. You know, but that's a missed opportunity there, where they're talking about the icy plunge for a challenge with for a fundraising event, and then also when your dog has had its day, you get the day off. Yeah. You know, next to our big Zondo Commission state capture inquiry, we're looking at least we know that when your pet, which I suppose is it is a problem, and it is something close to a lot of people's hearts, but I just find the juxtaposition of some of these stories a bit odd, and I think we really could have given more weight. If you're talking about the inquiry on the front page, I mean the stuff that's coming out. We've had Jacques Poe's book being mentioned again, the President's Keepers.
Yes.
And a lot of those coming to light and being justified, and you go, okay, well it's true. What more are we going to expect? So Yeah.
Is it cluttered? Would you rather have had them focus mainly on one big story?
Yeah, I think that we could have given a bit more attention to some of the more important things that we've seen happen this week.
All right. What have you picked up?
So from the Business Times front page, it's Ramaphosa arrests control of NHI.
Yeah.
So it's a story that's been covered the entire week about how Ramaphosa says that government is going to prioritize the NHI.
Yes.
And they're going to start rolling it over. And obviously there's the deadline of 2026 where they want everybody to be getting the best healthcare possible. And I think it's a very interesting and important story because healthcare is a major issue in this country, and we know that we don't really have the best healthcare facilities, especially in our public hospitals.
Yeah.
So with the NHI rolling out, it's a good thing because now every single person could possibly be getting very good healthcare in the future. So I think it's a very good front page. Interesting.
Well, obviously, this is more of a business news story. Why is it not making it to your mainline headlines? Because it's a very critical story.
Yes, it is a very critical story. But as Tandi said, there's so much happening in the country right
Correct.
now. And maybe it explains the clutter on the Sunday Times, yeah.
Well, let's go back to Harare there, hoping that, Peter, you are now more audible. You've got some Zim papers as well. What's the... well, obviously the biggest news is the inauguration of ED. But what are they saying?
So, a very good morning once again. I hope you can see me now and hear me loud and clear. We're outside the National Sports Stadium and tens of thousands of people have arrived from across the country. They've been bussed in from all corners of Zimbabwe. Earlier on, we were speaking to people as far as Plumtree, which is near the border with Botswana. And they've come in their numbers to support their president-elect, Emmerson Mnangagwa, who's going to usher in a new era. The first elected president since the Robert Mugabe era came to an end abruptly in November. And so the message that he's been saying, and one that the newspapers really have been covering, is one of saying, let's put the elections behind us, let's put...
Peter. Get those cables right there. But we will try our best to get him back online. Well, you're saying there's so much happening, but you know something that I'm also amazed about is that yesterday's Mama Sobuko's funeral is not as prominent as one would have thought. I mean, what happened yesterday was besides embarrassing, but it was news. And yes, the Sunday Independent has a pick.
Yeah, but it did make the front page. It was a lot of chaos at the funeral, unfortunately.
Yeah.
With the PAC having that kind of struggle or power struggle between the PAC and government wanting to be the prominent figure at the funeral and wanting to own Mama Sobukwe. So it was unfortunate that it happened in that manner, and I think that going forward then, for funerals which are politically linked, there should be a thorough discussion on who is going to be in charge at the funeral and how proceedings should be held, because you can't have situations where such an icon who's been laid to rest and now there's so much chaos at a funeral. It's really unnecessary.
Do you want to come in there? But I thought, and this is my view, I thought it was rehearsed. Otherwise, where did the program come from?
I don't think, it's not unusual to see these political tensions at these sort of state funerals often. I think that it's not the first time that people have been accused of hijacking funerals for political gains or political agendas. And I think, we're heading up into our pre-elections campaigning time, and we're going to be seeing more of this. I think that it's a disrespect to the proceedings. It's a disrespect to the family, and we really need to separate this. But how do you do that when it is a political event and it is a state funeral? You need to figure it out.
Fine. We are an African country. We are in Africa, values and morals and all that. This is a funeral. Was the media supposed to cut the feed and not show that chaos?
No,
because it was a funeral?
You know, I think that the media, you know, did the right thing to cover it. I think it is a problem, or that it was a chaotic event, and you know, to unpack those political tensions, to unpack that issue, it's different if it's a closed, respected family has said we don't want this to be a public event. That's a different story. But when it is a public event, and when the media have a responsibility to cover the story, then they do so.
You agree?
Yeah, by all means. So if the media was invited, if it's a state funeral, and especially for somebody of his status, we were expecting to have it broadcasted, but having the feed cut was very unnecessary, and it didn't benefit anybody. It's tensions that we need to see and talk about eventually.
Well, of course, later we're going to be talking about the issues around nudity and all that. But before we even get to that story, if you look at the Sunday World, you should have that. I mean, you look at that story, there's Simpiwe there, okay? Simpiwe is, well, she's not necessarily fully dressed, but you go into the story, it's probably on page what?
5.
Page 5. And it's a single liner, so insignificant compared to the prominence of the front cover story, Tandy.
Sex sells, you know. I think you've got a very full kind of cover on, well, a full picture on the cover of this, taking up a lot of the front page space.
Yes.
And you know, I'm glad that we're going to be talking about the naked issue later on, because it's exactly this kind of problem that we need to be dealing with. It's like you say, it's you then turn to page 5 and you know, there's not one semi-naked picture at all.
Yeah, she's...
And so, obviously, you know, it gets your attention on the front cover, and you go, oh, you know, what's going to happen on page 5? And then you kind of go into the detail. So I don't think it's something that we need to really unpack or really analyze, because it happens all the time. I mean, this is what a lot of media tend to do. It's entertainment.
Well, let's go to this Sunday Sun there. I think you have you should. Not so sure. Do you have the copy? Oh
no,
we don't seem to have the copyright right now. But you know, one of the stories that's being covered, and controversially so, is the Arthur CC case. Yeah. You know. Now seemingly facts are changing, and we don't know what to believe now. It was the same newspapers that were coming up with this. She was murdered, she was assaulted, this and that, he was assaulted, you know, this tit for tat, and all of a sudden facts are changing.
Yeah, I think also he just made it so complicated when he went to court, and he was crying and he got all emotional throughout the court proceedings. Obviously,
oh, he's hurt.
Yeah, no, but obviously it's maybe to just get mercy from the public and to get a bit of comfort from the public, of course. But it's definitely just a he said, she said story, and it's going back and forth every single time.
And we, as the media, must just carry on writing.
No.
Okay. Well, we're taking a quick break. When we return, let's have a chat with media manager online. What statistics that have been released from Media Inflation Watch data for 2018, that is. And according to that survey, there's a decline on rates and audiences across all media. So we're going to unpack that only after the break. Please don't go away.
This place is looking a mess.
Boss, you holding the plans upside down.
Don't talk back. Lamba, you fire!
Unfair dismissal. Let Clientele Legal tackle your labor issues for you. We have tough, professional lawyers standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. SMS DEFEND to 32281 and we'll call you back. SMS now.
daily dose of entertainment news. Watch Trends, Saturday at 12 p.m.
SABC News celebrates Women's Month.
Welcome to the Social Media Wrap. I'm Lebo Changela. Let's look at the major trends of the week with Tanya Corey.
This week saw social media outraged by a person called Adam Katsavelos. He plunged the country back into the racism heated debate. South Africa took action when the video surfaced of Katsavelos using the K word and describing a beach in Greece as heaven because it didn't have black people on it. Firstly, I'm not sure what is the issue with South Africans and beaches. And secondly, I just can't understand why a person would do something like this. He has made such an impact on South Africa, and negatively. Brands have distanced themselves, friends and family have condemned his actions, various human rights bodies have taken actions, and political parties are now using it as cannon fodder. Social media, on the other hand, turned kangaroo court, and almost instantly it released his home address, his telephone number, and other information as they took up guns. Another big story was the land expropriation. It's still top of the conversation pile, and it's no wonder because Trump has weighed in on the so-called killing of white farmers. He allegedly is putting a report together about the mass killing of white farmers in South Africa, making the debate even hotter than it already was and adding fuel to a fire that was absolutely unnecessary. So between Trump and Katsavelos this week, social media hasn't been a happy space. The state capture inquiry also made a huge impact as that kicked off, and people are waiting for justice. Marikana continues to be one of the biggest stories on the charts. And of course, the Zim Concord story comes in as one of a big South African story because of the involvement of Dali Mpofu and others. And then the closing down of ANN7, or Afro Voice, as it was called, as the contract came to an end with MultiChoice, also left social media with a conversation to be held.
It's now time to have a look at what you've liked this past week. South African advocates being granted permits to represent MDC in Zimbabwe Concord case, and Zimbabwe police on high alert ahead of election court bid. Close on its heels, users were very interested in the story about 3 PSL teams forced to share Peter Mokaba Stadium. The article on actor Silo Sibotsane in court on domestic violence charges also brought traffic to our website. And finally, users were interested in IFP leader Mangosuthu Buthelezi saying the ANC owes him an apology. That's it for your social media wrap. For SABC News in Johannesburg, I'm Lebo Changela.
Well, welcome back now to unpack the complexities of this survey, which we had highlighted just before we went to the break. I'm now joined by Mike Leahy. Mike, welcome. Well, you are what? A media manager, Africa from Media Manager Online, Media Inflation Watch, that is. Let's talk about this research quickly. What have you found out? Are you saying that viewerships, readerships, and listenerships are declining, or what is it? And the rates thereof are also coming down or going up?
It's a very complex situation, and it's a very dynamic situation depending upon the economy, depending upon the amount of advertising spend out there. And also it depends on the ability or inability of media owners to charge what they want to charge, and the ability of advertisers to pay it. But essentially, the first quarter of this year, on the first quarter of last year, and the first quarter normally sets the tone for the rest of the year, overall, advertising rates were up 5%, so about in line with the Consumer Price Index. The performance across the board for media was down 3%. That means a cost per thousand, the cost of advertisers reaching 1,000 people across the board was up about 10%.
Now, like you're saying, it's a very complex thing to understand. Why is it important? Why do you embark on such studies? For who is this? Is it for ordinary people like me to know, or are you just doing this for the managers?
It's for two sets of people, three sets really. Advertisers, one set, their agencies who do the negotiations, and also media owners, so they can set their advertising rates competitively.
So in simple terms, are advertisers spending more for for the same figures in terms of viewership, readership and listenership, or are they spending less?
Advertisers are spending more, but not in proportion to what they're getting. So in other words, they're spending slightly more, but the performances, so it's, if you like, rates are inflating, but performances are deflating.
Okay.
So the cost per thousand, the cost of reaching 1,000 people like you and I and the man out in the street is going up and up and up, disproportionately. And it has been for many, many years.
Well, let me perhaps just bring you in here. But does it make sense, though, or is it just inflation? There's also, an influx of new media platforms and all that. I don't understand.
I think it does make a lot of sense, but I think you really need to get into the what aren't you looking at in terms of your data and your statistics, and what it means in terms of audience trends, and are you looking at your traditional media and your radio broadcasts and sort of print, and are your audiences moving over to online? Because I'm pretty sure that you're going to see a massive increase in media consumption online. And your advertisers. So I don't think it's anything surprising. I think that it is to be expected, and like you said, it's a trend that you've been seeing over a couple of years, which would match the sort of media, the development on traditional versus digital platforms. But again, I'm not too sure if that's what you kind of looked at with your methodologies.
What one's got to bear in mind is that we're talking about mass audiences here. That media, because there's a greater proliferation of media, there's more niche media. But niche media might give you a better audience, but they do cost more. Because you don't have the economies of scale. The Sunday Times here, per copy that you distribute, is a lot less than, say, a community newspaper to produce per copy. So the smaller the media, you don't get the economies of scale. But therefore, the cost for reaching those people from advertisers is going up disproportionately, which may be a good thing because it might be a better audience, but the costs are going up nevertheless.
Okay, hold it there. Actually, I want us to just quickly go back to Harare. I think we've got Peter on a better line. Peter, we're giving you the last shot now. Is the MDC Alliance attending?
I have a feeling that they're unlikely to be here today. The people that we're seeing here at the National Sports Stadium who've come in their tens of thousands and from across the country. Busloads of people have been brought in from as far afield as Plumtree, which is almost on the border with Zimbabwe and Botswana. So they've come in their tens of thousands. They're probably going to fill the stadium for this inauguration. And it really does mark a new era for Zimbabwe. The president will be giving a speech today, and I suspect a lot of what he's going to say is going to be trying to unify the country, because let's not forget that slightly less, and this is using official figures, a fraction less than 50% of the people in Zimbabwe didn't vote for him. And so he has to bring those people on board. And in the last few days in particular, he's been reaching out to the opposition, he's been reaching out to the churches that have been showing him support, and his message has been about, let's come together, let's put the elections behind us, let's stop the politicking and start building the country, building the economy. So that's likely going to be the message a little bit later on. But as I said, there are thousands of people in queues right now getting ready to get inside the stadium and cheer the man that they voted for as the next president of Zimbabwe, Mpo.
Any foreign dignitaries that have been confirmed shall attend today's inauguration?
So what we believe is that apart from President Cyril Ramaphosa, we believe that Edgar Lungu from Zambia will be here, Mokwetsi Masisi from Botswana. We're expecting the African Union chairperson, Paul Kagame from Rwanda, to come through, and Lesotho's Prime Minister Tom Tabane. Those are the names that we're hearing at this stage, but in about an hour's time, half an hour's time, when the official program begins, we'll have a fuller picture who's coming. But former President Festus Mogae apparently might come as well. So there are quite a lot of number of people. Ian Khama, Dr. Seretse Khama, Ian Khama will not be attending, apparently because he has prior engagement. And you'll remember he had quite a difficult relationship with former President Robert Mugabe and ZANU-PF. So, read into that what you will. But certainly regional leadership is here and will be well represented in the stadium. And we'll give you an update once we're inside and once it starts, who was able to come through at the last minute. Because remember, it was only on Friday at 4 o'clock that this inauguration was even made possible, because we didn't know what the verdict would be. So in the last 48 hours, the Zimbabwean government has been working overtime to make sure that people get invited through their local embassies, and the regional leadership is certainly showing up a little bit later on in Mpo.
Perhaps two-pronged question. Is RG attending, and when can we expect the announcement of the new executive of government or the cabinet?
All right. So Robert Mugabe hasn't been seen in public much. I mean, he did that press conference that Sunday before the polls, and he's been off the radar ever since. And this is a man who's staying pretty much, keeping himself to himself. So it's unlikely he's going to be here. Remember, on that Sunday, he said that he couldn't vote for ZANU-PF, the party that he had dedicated his entire political career to, because they had betrayed him, in his view. So at the front of that list, he had put Emerson Mnangagwa. So it's unlikely that we'll see Robert Mugabe here today, and perhaps people that were loyal to him and his faction. But as far as the cabinet is concerned, I have a feeling that President Mnangagwa is going to hit the ground running very quickly, because remember, the country has been on pause for 4 weeks now, and he's keen to get business done. There's probably unlikely going to be huge changes, because he's had an opportunity when he took over from Robert Mugabe in November. He put in new faces, he put people in place. So it's unlikely it's going to be substantially different from the cabinet that was just before the election. Perhaps a few new faces and some may be reshuffled. But I think we pretty much have an idea, if we look at the current, or the cabinet as it was just before the election, as what it might look like in the coming days. And I'm sure, I doubt it will take a week before that happens.
Peter NDORO, thank you very much, talking to us from Harare there. And indeed, we'll be crossing live once that inauguration gets underway in Zimbabwe. Well, back to studio, we're still talking about the changes in media landscape. Mike, let's just recap quickly. Let's look at the African, and there's something that I still don't understand about you researchers and all that. It's sometimes wrong to classify people black and all that, but when it comes to media categorization, there's black stations or black mediums and all that. How are they performing, whether it be on radio and let's look at radio, for instance, and maybe television. Let's add that black channels.
People like myself really don't look at color anymore. We look at money. The people, the money that people are prepared to spend.
Yeah.
That's the lowest common denominator, and that's what drives the economy.
Yeah.
It's difficult to get around race, of course it is, and one shouldn't ignore it. But the underlying principle is money. It's the economy. It's trying to sell brands and the people who are buying those brands. Certainly, most media planners these days in advertising agencies are themselves black. Let's ignore those and get away from those classifications. It's too easy. It's more complicated than that.
It's money.
Money.
Okay.
It's green.
All right.
Green is the color, not black or white.
This research comes in the wake of Afro Worldview closure. What was their paper again?
The New Age.
The New Age shutting down as well. It would appear media is not having it easy.
It's not easy at all. And some people might think that all the regular newspaper buyers are moving to online. But in terms of advertising, it's also very hard for online because there's competition with Google and with Facebook. So that's where advertisers are willing to spend, because most people spend their time on there compared to on news sites. So I think it is becoming harder and harder, even for online. For newspapers, it's even worse because it's declining every single time. I mean, it seems like the weekly newspapers are doing much better than the dailies, but still circulation is not really that high. So that's still one of the main issues we have. So there is definitely a decline.
In the last 10 years or so, the average daily newspapers declined about 50% in terms of circulation. But let's just unpack that a bit. Yes, the circulation has declined, but they're still pretty high. And also one's got to look at the type of readers. So perhaps they're less mass media, more niche media, and that if you look at the type of reader that they're able to deliver, they're still a very, very valuable audience.
Okay. Well, hold it there. We're taking a quick break. When we return, we continue with this. This is Media Monitor.
Imagine if you could learn everything you need to know about life from yourself. What questions would you ask? What wisdom would you share?
Well, welcome back. The Marie Claire September issue is out, featuring the annual Naked issue. Now, the Naked issue collaborated with a number of South African celebrities, industry creatives and influencers who advocate for body positivity and self-worth. According to Marie Claire, that is, nakedness is about truth, transparency and finding power in vulnerability. Wow. I don't actually believe that.
You think that it's just because sex sells?
Yep.
I don't entirely think that. I think body positivity has been a big topic recently, with a lot of plus size models coming out showing women that you don't have to look a certain way to be on television, to be on the front cover of a magazine.
Yeah.
So it's also about changing mentality. As much as sex sells, it's also about changing mentality and shifting towards a mindset that different women are beautiful. You can be different and beautiful. You don't need to look a certain way to be classified as attractive or beautiful.
But why not promote healthy lifestyle and positivity around taking good care?
No, but body positivity is about that. So it's about saying, listen, I am naturally quite a big boned or heavy person.
No, there's no big bone on head. we all have the same sizes of bones.
Okay, so it's about saying, listen, this is how I am naturally, genetically. I have a certain body type. So I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm going to be healthy, but I'm not going to starve myself so that I can be skinny and look like I don't know who. So it's about looking for role models that are also realistic for everyday people. Looking at people you can relate to and say, okay, I have the same body type and look at her, she's doing well. She's on TV, she's doing this and that. And I think that's what it's about.
Let me bring you in here.
So I think there are a couple of things that we need to, focus on or take into consideration. And the first is that, this is a campaign about body positivity. It's women, it's a female magazine, but it's also an industry that is, known for the complete opposite and is still dealing with issues of patriarchal leadership. And, it doesn't settle very, very well. The other issue that I want to raise is, you can understand the approach, you can understand the positive aspect of this, but do we really need a campaign for it? I mean, if you're really trying to shift the narrative and shift the agenda, why not just implement it into your everyday issue? Why does it have to be, why do you focus on the abnormal for a campaign? I mean, you're almost highlighting the difference. Myself, I don't see myself represented, on an everyday basis in Marie Claire. Maybe during the naked issue in September, you're going to get people going, oh, I can relate, and you can talk about the body positivity. I mean, the whole naked thing. Do we really have a massive issue with it being naked? I mean, where's the Sunday sun? I mean, we're seeing this every day. Every day. And the thing with the Marie Claire issue is that, yes, it's naked. It has been done quite tastefully. The images that you have seen, you're not having breasts exposed or vaginas exposed all over the place. It is quite tasteful, and it is done with that air. So I don't think the naked part is the big issue. I think it's very much more about the campaign being driven, and if you're wanting to normalize it. Don't have a campaign.
I think they're trying to drive sales. What do you think?
I'd like to look at the circulation in a few months' time. But there's no doubt that in South Africa, nakedness in print has had its day. If you're that way inclined, I'm told, there's an awful lot online that you can go and look at if that is your bag. Certainly the lad mags like FHM, Scope, etc., they're all dead. The reason why they're dead is that they had their day, they couldn't sell them anymore, so that they were canned. So it's not sex that's, or not nakedness that's selling. So perhaps there's something in the body image, etc. I'd like to chat that through with a few Marie Claire readers, see what they think. Perhaps we're not the average Marie Claire reader.
In fact,
here.
Who are the Marie Claire readers?
I don't know, probably women. I think they are targeting women, obviously. I think when we talk about this naked issue in particular, the hashtag Dear Body also makes it very interesting because it's all these influencers and celebrities writing kind of a letter to their bodies.
Wait. Who does Zodo Abantu influence?
She influences a lot of people.
A lot of women.
You need to check her following. You need to check her bookings. That is enough. People want to see her. So I think I think the twist that I liked to the campaign was the hashtag Dear Body, and where they say, Dear Body, for example, I'm sorry for being unkind at times, I'm sorry for this and this. And I think just humanizing all these people we always put on a pedestal and think, oh my word, she's so perfect or she's so confident, and seeing that vulnerable aspect to them. So I think that also makes it very relatable.
Well, okay.
You're not sold.
I'm not actually, but anyway, let's look at in the coming week. Obviously the state capture is still going to be making headlines, the inauguration. What are the other issues?
I don't know if people are going to still continue covering the racist rant that happened this past week, because I know social media has been blowing up every single day because there have been statements left, right and center, apologies and all that. So I just want to see where it's going to go next, and yeah, we'll see this coming week.
Do you think that story will develop though? I mean, I thought it was a boom type of a story that went up and then that's it.
I'm actually shocked at how long it lasted. Like, for the whole week, it was the only thing people were talking about. Just for the mere fact that it was there for the whole week, and I mean the consequences following the video.
Or maybe even the case.
The case also, because there's a case now, so maybe there could be follow-up stories. There could be more coming because of all the reaction.
Yeah, I agree. I think that those stories are going to be, we're going to see a lot of headlines and a lot of unpacking of the issues, especially the Zondo Commission, the inquiry, especially with the revelations that we saw happening on Friday, and bringing in some of the Treasury, the former Treasury guys. We're going to see a focus on that. Also, the SABC, deadline for public participation around the editorial policies. Is
for
taking
a sec,
place.
I thought you were going to talk about the money.
No. Okay. Editorial policies, codes of conduct. It's a big thing. It's redefining the public broadcaster in terms of policies and procedures, and they're big issues with the current draft. So deadlines for submissions are during the week, the end of the month. So that I'm hoping will get quite a bit of traction. And also I think that we're going to be unpacking some of the more the human issues with the racist video, Adam's apology, and people getting really, taking that to task, and the charges against him and repercussions thereof.
I think the bigger issue in the longer term has got to be the digital transition of the broadcast signal, because if the authorities don't get the transition right, there isn't going to be an SABC1 audience out there.
Okay.
Quite simple.
Well, Mark, Thandi and Queenin, thank you very much. Let's continue to talk about this hashtag Dear Body. I've got views that I may not be able to express here or there. But thank you very much for watching our show, Media Monitor. We hope that you will join us again, same time next week. And I hope Peter will be back and he will be able to talk to you then. From me and the entire crew, you have yourself a wonderful time. Maina Camararo.